Hey guys, Jennifer Hobbs here, your host. Celebrate the Struggle podcast, where I want us to get comfortable with the uncomfortable and talk about our stories, our journeys, and how we got to where we are now. And so I'm so excited to be here with Annette Whittenberger, because although I can sit here and read off all these amazing things she's done, I don't know her story, and I'm excited to hear it and for all of you to hear it. But Annette she has her own podcast, which the title alone just blows me away. Clearly, like we have things in common. We're on similar paths. The title of her podcast is The Truths We Hide. Like, whoa. Makes you just want to watch it from that, listen to it from that title. But she is an Army veteran, a life experience coach with her company. She's the CEO of A Wild Ride Called Life. And mic drop, we're not over, because she's also a published author, published a book this year, The Wall Between Two Lives. Annette, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited that you're here. I was fortunate enough to catch wind of just who this boss babe Annette is on that veterinary tribe. And so I've watched you, and the minute I started to stalk you, I saw the cover of your book. Wow. So those of you listening, again, the title is The Wall Between Two Lives. Annette, can you tell everybody? Actually, I'm going to be a spoiler alert. The cover, you have to go see it yourself. It shows two sets of shoes, two sets of feet. And one of them is civilian with cute little heels. And one of them is combat boots. Annette, tell us a little bit about The Wall Between Two Lives. And then we'll go talk about your journey. But is it a memoir?
It is a memoir. And what's funny is that photo was taken like in 2012, way before I even ventured on this journey, way before I even realized that I was really struggling. So it was almost like God was talking. He was like, let's take this picture because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's crazy. That was not meant to be. It was just a picture that was part of a photo shoot with my very good friend, Tara Ruby of Tara Ruby Photography. And so when I decided to write a book, I was like, that's the cover I want. I don't care. Like, we're going to make this happen. And I asked her for permission. She's like, duh. But yeah, that was never supposed to, it was never, I had no idea it was going to be.
Already you're rocking my socks off. Okay, so before we get to the book, let's hear a little bit about you. Where do you come from? And like, what's a little bit about your story? How many years were you in? And
thanks. So I think everybody starts when I was a little girl. No, but I was raised in a small town, which is not small anymore. It's Simi Valley, California. And I went to an all-girl Catholic high school. So to join the Army from there was just not the norm. There was like two of us in our class, actually three. One, I think, was Air Force. The other one enlisted. And when she enlisted, I thought she was such a badass. I was like, I want to enlist too. And I couldn't do it. I had the recruiter at the house. I was like, I can't do it. So I got scared. But when I went to Arizona State University, I was like, I want to try the ROTC program. And so I did that. I was like, oh, I'll just try it a few years. And then 17 years later, I was trying to figure out my life. I didn't make the list to Lieutenant Colonel, and it devastated me. And I think that's when everything just fell on me. Like this ton of bricks was like, what is wrong with you? Like, what? And it stirred up all these emotions from my whole life, from the age of 6 until 2021. And that's when I started to realize that all these signs were there, but I didn't know, because in the 80s, you don't talk about that stuff. You don't talk about sexual abuse. You don't talk about divorce. You don't talk about any of that. So I was a master of suppression. I wore all these masks as a kid, as a teenager, in the military, as a mom, as a spouse. And that's where the book came. It was just like, it's time to try to help someone else, because my life was a mess and my family didn't even know it.
Yeah, and that statement's strong there, like wearing a bunch of different masks. I feel like a lot of people can relate to that, people that are struggling with things. You had mentioned like all the way back to 6. So was it when you started to realize you were struggling, and then was it then that you started to identify like, man, like all this has come to this point from these things, that, and started to identify the things that happen at 6 and that were bringing you to the point to where you were identifying how it was shaking things in your life?
Yeah, because after a few therapy sessions, when they want to dig into your life, about things that I thought that I just blacked out, I was like, it happened, I'm over it. But I really wasn't, because as I started to dig into my life, that was why I had toxic relationships. That was why I needed to have a man in my life. Like, there was reasons why I was the way I was. It wasn't just, oh, it was a phase as a teenager. Oh, there was real shit that happened, and I didn't know, because I just went through life just like, yeah, whatever, it was normal. But it wasn't. And I obviously struggled, because I, even in my late 30s, I was a hot mess. Like, it wasn't me. And that's so embarrassing to even bring that up. I ruined my marriage. I there was things that I did because of things I didn't deal with.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you say that, and that you're honest to say that, because look, fortunately I have good friends. And so like a battle buddy of mine who's also a good friend of mine, and we live close, like we'll have coffee, and like we're able to identify that at 37, 38 years old, like we still want to be better people. We want to be better parents. Like, so it gives me hope, and just, it's nice to know like, okay, it's okay. Like if you are a hot mess, if you see yourself as still needing to get right in some ways, it's nice. So you say that, that it's embarrassing, but you're right, it is embarrassing. But the good thing is that we get to the point to where it is embarrassing. And when we identify that, like, I want to do something about it, like that's awesome to have that growth process, because unfortunately some people aren't there yet, and some people never get there.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. There was some pivotal changes in my life that if that wouldn't have happened, I probably wouldn't be here dealing with it in the way that I am. I probably would still be a freaking mess.
Mm-hmm. So is that kind of where your podcast is stemmed from, like talking to people about the stuff that is uncomfortable, and the stigmas and the sensitive topics that people want to tiptoe around?
Yeah, no, for sure. Because it was really like a title for me, like the truths that I hide and that I've hidden. And I thought, well, maybe I just need to start a platform, and not just for me, but there's other people out there that need to be heard. Maybe they don't want to be on camera. Maybe they just want to be behind a microphone, but they want to share how they've gotten to where they're at now, how they survived their trauma or their, any life's obstacles. And so I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I was like, I'm just going to start it and see what happens. And then, I'm going into my 3rd season, and I thought, I'm just going to continue to do what I feel. I'm a big believer in God. I'm just going to continue to do what is put in front of me, and that's what I'm going to do.
When did you start it?
Gosh, 2 years ago now.
I feel like we have so much in common. Like I also just feel like this calling, and to put myself on somewhere where people can hear me and we can talk and relate. And so that's why I decided to do this podcast. Actually, when it was someone had suggested it like 6 to 9 months ago, I was just like, nah, it's not for me. Like, and then so I feel like we have a lot in common. I dig it. I dig you, Annette. Okay, so at what point, so you had said that when you didn't make lieutenant colonel,
Mm-hmm.
was that like the big turning point, or what was it when you identified like you needed to deal with stuff, and that kind of started you on this journey of personal growth?
I knew I was not going in a good direction before I found out that I didn't make it. So when I didn't make it, that was when it was like, I completely failed. Like I should have been better before. I should have done so many things that before that led up to it. But that's when it really hit me like, what the heck? I wanted this. I'm a complete failure. How come I couldn't advance like my peers? How come all these things? So everything was a question and nothing was, I didn't, I almost wanted to not blame myself. It was like everybody else. I was mad at the world. I was
Right.
mad at the army. I didn't go to my own retirement ceremony. There was like so many things I didn't do because I was so filled with anger. And that's when I was like, I got to do something because I didn't want to live. Honestly, I was on the floor at like 2 a.m. crying and I was done. And my friend from high school, she had to talk me off the ledge. Like, you have kids in that. You're not a failure. You are successful. All these things that I knew, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. I had to do something. And I don't know why I thought launching a website to the whole world was the answer. But for me, it was, I'm done being this way. Like, people need to know that, yeah, I made it to a major. Yeah, oh my God, I retired. But man, you don't even know what was going on behind the scenes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's when yeah, it was one of the things that made me go, if I don't do something, I'm not going to be able to be here anymore.
Mm-hmm. I admire it that, I mean, I love that you're doing that because like you can sit there and judge a book by its cover and we can all sit here and look at other people's lives and be like, oh, like they're doing a good job. Like, oh, I wish, and hope for things. Some people even get like jealous and to let's all be honest with ourselves that it's life and that's not always what's going on the outside. And so it sounds to me, and I feel like I have been there before, like it was, you said you wanted to blame everyone else, but then it comes this turning point where you decide it's time to take some accountability. And I think that's another thing I really hope, like through talking with people on this podcast, that people can relate, but then also find some personal growth in it as well and identify like nobody's going to change things for you. And if you're not comfortable with something, then you're going to have to no one's going to do it for you. It is a tough pill to swallow if you're not ready to hear that, but I mean, it sounds to me like you definitely got to that point. And then, so you said you started a website, or were you talking about the podcast?
So I started my blog, the website of Wild Life.
Yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's when I started it.
Okay. And then, did you start the book after?
No. So I started, I had a secret journal, like a diary and WordPress, because I wanted to write, but I wasn't ready to share. So when I was ready to share, that's when I launched the website. And I actually I actually did start a podcast in the end of 2016. And there was like 4 episodes, but to me, it was so depressing. I wanted an outlet. I was like talking to myself. So I decided to squash that because I didn't want, I was like, what am I doing here? So that's when I stopped that. The book didn't even, I really got serious in 2020. It took me a year to do that. Because, for some people they can write a book in a weekend. But I had to be in the right state of mind to write because it's hard. And I had to talk to my family and, tell them, look, I'm going to do this, but I don't, is it okay if I use your name, or I could totally change your name, but you are in it. And so I wanted them to be okay with it, because part of me, I mean, people told me it's your book, you can write it, but I wanted to be respectful because parts of it has my husband in it, my kids are in it, my stepbrothers and all these things. So it was a journey to do that. It was hard.
I bet. Actually, so I can relate to this because as I'm working on the second book, which is my first one, Calmed Growth After Trauma, is the story of like enlisting and going to Iraq, meeting my husband, him being hit by a roadside bomb, and all the trauma that came to our unit, our relationship. And I found that the hardest thing to talk about was the war at home and the things that come afterwards. And as I went back and revised it, because I feel like it just kind of, I wrapped things up, and I got that feedback, like I wrapped things up, like marriage and kids, like into just like a short part. And it was because it was so difficult it was like, wow, this is a whole nother book. And so as I'm working on it and typing, this is life that's still continuing to happen. And this is struggles that are arising. And so then I get scared, and I'm back in that spot where I'm like, wow, like I'm going to share this with the world. Like, oh goodness, I need to talk to my husband about this, my family about this. And so you're right. And for anyone listening to that, like that has thought about putting their story down, whether it's on paper or on voice memos in your phone, like that fear is super scary. And being vulnerable to put out the good, the bad, and the ugly can be super scary, but it's gonna help someone, because we're all human. I mean, this is life, and it doesn't look like how the front of a beautiful book cover looks, but your book cover is awesome. Okay, so I was going to ask you, so being a life coach for a wild ride called life, what does that look like for somebody like that needs some, like myself, and probably all of us, to be honest with you, like what does life coaching with Annette look like?
So I really dig into my experiences and how I can help someone else with finance. Man, I used retail therapy like it was nobody's business. I maxed out my credit card. I did all these things. So we get into the weeds of, why are you afraid to do this? Why do you do this? So life experience coach is just life experiences of what I went through and how I can help you. And that's what I've done. And it's really amazing to see people go, oh, that's why, and give them the courage to actually admit it. Because I mean, I'm 46 and there's still stuff that I'm like, oh my God, really? Yeah. I'm still evolving. I'm not perfect. Yes, I may have done all these things, but let me tell you that 3 years ago, I shouldn't have been here, So, that's what we do. We just dig into how can we learn to live with our mental health challenges instead of suffer from them. Because I know my husband asked me, are you going to let this control you? Are you going to suffer? Or are you going to live with it? And I was like, oh my God, that's exactly it. I spent so many years suffering and being paralyzed that now I'm owning it. Yeah, I have PTSD, depression, and anxiety. I do. But I'm learning to figure myself out, and I'm learning to continue on this path. And the path is mine, and if you want to be on it, let's do it together. Otherwise, because with whatever we do, we're going to be criticized. I've had people ask me, why do you put stuff on social media? Why do you talk about this? Why do you talk about that? Because I've saved someone's life by doing it. So I'm going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you keep doing it. And you're absolutely right. Like, people are going to criticize, and then like with things you're doing, sometimes I know from experience, like it's hard for other people to get excited or even relate and like be like, oh yeah, that's super awesome, and so it's just continuing to find. And you know what, so that brings me back to life coaching. Like, we all can't do that on our own. And so like, it's so nice to have an accountability partner, like someone helping you to talk out loud and not giving you the answers, but helping you to get to your answers, which is super difficult for us sometimes. And I know I had an accountability partner, a book coach during writing my book, and I probably wouldn't have wrote it had I not had some, had that coaching. And so I think that that is a really good thing for you to be in, with all that experience. Way to kill it. I know I just feel like I'm rambling there, but one thing I want to bring you to now is that things that you do for self-care. I've been trying to ask all of my guests, because life still continues to be a struggle. We know this. You've said that multiple times, like, I've done all these things, but let me tell you. And so we know that we have to do certain things to keep pushing ourselves and find the best in us. So what kind of things do you do for self-care, either physically, mentally, or spiritually, that you try to stay consistent with, or relatively consistent, because like that helps you thrive on that, or you have some benefits from it?
So, like I mentioned before, I'm I was raised Catholic. I lost my way, came back, all that good stuff. But now I finally realized that, he's here. And so when I get in that mindset of I wish I was them, or how come I can't be successful like they are, I literally have to stop and pray and say, okay, remind myself that my path is, we all have different paths. Mine is for me and me alone, and everybody has their own calling. That's one thing. Nails, I go and try to get my nails done every month, because it's just something that I like, even though it's just my real nail, they're really short, a pretty polish, just getting something. And getting my hair done. Yeah, I have grays, man. Like yesterday when I went and got my hair done, I was like, girl, where do those come from? So it's just simple things like that, just to help. I don't know. I don't want it to sound like I'm being vain. It's just something that just makes me happy. I want to feel pretty, because I went through like 6 months where I just didn't wear any makeup, because I didn't feel like I didn't want to do anything. I mean, I was such in a rut, and I stopped doing the podcast. I stopped really writing again. I stopped so many things because I was so overwhelmed with social media and with all these things. So, simple things like that. I love Netflix. Hulu, and I will binge watch the crap out of something, because sometimes you just need something mindless to watch so that you can just get away from this. I had to learn that it will be there when I come back. My friends that follow me or whatever, it'll be there. So I had to learn to not chase things and rush and do things half-assed. I just had to be present, because I still have my son who lives here. And that all to me is a form of self-care, because I was going to lose my mind. Being an entrepreneur or an author or whatever, I'm not famous.
Uh-huh.
I'm still human, and I still have to be a mom. And if I don't do something for me, just something simple like that, then I'm going to explode.
Absolutely. I think I just used those words, like explode, with a friend this morning, as we were just talking about life, and as those things build up.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. And that is self-care, really. And one thing I want to add to that, if somebody is listening or watching this and they're like, well, I don't deserve to go pay the money to have my nails done because, like, I didn't write a book, or I don't have a podcast or something like that. Like, the fact that you even get up out of bed and you are still pushing on through, you are trying in whatever areas of your life you really are trying. Now, if you're not, then now you're back to that step where you need to take some accountability and own it. But if you are, just even get out of bed and trying to get to be the person and the purpose you have in life, then you get your nails done, or you take that time to watch Netflix. Like, it is self-care, as long as it's clearly not overused or whatever, which we can all definitely relate to that too.
Yes.
So
you deserve it.
Annette, if money and resources were not an issue, what are your biggest, wildest hopes and dreams with your purpose and your purpose that's been put in your life?
I've wanted to create a foundation for children who have parents that live with PTSD. And I put it out into the universe. It's on my website. I have the logo. I have all these things, but I haven't moved forward with it because it's probably just not the right time.
Mm-hmm.
That is my dream. As one of my dreams is to do that, because my children have been through so much hell with me. And when my daughter, finally admitted or just shared with me her thoughts a few years ago, I said, we need to do something for the kids, and not just for the younger, but for teens. Like, they now have seen the way that I think they should deal with things, and that's not right. So yes, that's what I want to do.
That's awesome. It's gonna happen. I mean,
it is. I just don't know.
Yeah. Logo's done, but I like that you say and are just honest, and it doesn't bring you down to say, like, maybe it's just not the right time. That's something else that we all need to hear sometimes, and we all need to chew on and accept, even when we don't want it to, because we just want it to.
It's so hard, but yes.
Mm-hmm. In the meantime, I had read in the description on Amazon where your book is available. I'm sure it's available elsewhere, but I did see, again, the folks, that is The Wall Between Two Lives, which I'll put in the show notes. But I noticed that you volunteer for a lot of things, and I had read on there the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, but one that stood out to me was the Tragedy Assistance Program for Children Survivors. And I'm gonna have to look that up, because there's just so many resources out there, and it's so nice to get in the know about those. I've been trying to keep a running list to make available for people, but having lost 5 people in our unit, there are quite a few children survivors, and so I'm just now becoming aware of the things that are available to them that maybe they don't know about. So, way to be a volunteer, way to follow your purpose and what God has put on your heart, and to step out of that fear into the unknown, which can be uncomfortable sometimes, and use not just your struggle, but like the continuing struggle, the post-traumatic growth, to teach and enlighten other people, and then to also push yourself to be the best Annette you can be. It was so nice to meet you, Annette. I will be sure to put everything in the show notes, but tell everyone how they can stalk you. Again, in the show notes, I'll put your link tree, which, dear Lord, I need to make myself a link tree. I'm just now hearing about what this is. This is so cool. But aside from that, how can someone stalk you so that they can, well, obviously, folks, you can go subscribe to her podcast, The Truths We Hide. What platforms is that available on, Annette?
So many. iTunes, Audible, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You could go to all those places to find it.
Awesome. And other than Amazon, to get The Wall Between Two Lives, where else? Is that just everywhere else too? You could just Google it?
Pretty much, yes. BarnesandNoble.com, Target.com, Walmart.com. Yes.
So I am going to go ahead and say this, because I heard it on a movie one time, and it made me laugh so hard. People don't even get it now because I don't think people understand the movie, but there's some movie where it's like, Google me, bitch. And that reminds me of it. So we'll just have to wrap it up on that note. How else can they stalk you before we bid you farewell today, Annette?
You can go to my website, awildridecalledlife.com.
Perfect. That's all pretty easy, folks. You got all these numbers and things you have to remember. But again, it's in the show notes, so be sure to subscribe to Celebrate the Struggle so you don't miss the next amazing story of comeback and triumph and the hot mess we continue to live from here on out. Annette, thank you so much for being here today in this space. I just already know I'm going to continue to learn a lot from you, but you inspire me, and I hope together we can just continue helping other people together and separate, just in our lives on a similar mission. Okay, I'm going to stop rambling now. You have a wonderful day, and thanks again.